All right, so Simon says that we are actually on the cusp of a kind of disc golf bubble. Let's get into if that is truly the case and if that is something that we should be concerned about. So on the Tour Life podcast, a fan asked the question, why is disc golf kind of behaving a little bit weird where we have tournaments that don't really fill up in the same manner that they used to? And if we are like entering a disc golf bubble? And Simon says,
from all the insides that I know, like business wise, pretty much yes. We're not going backwards, but we're flatlining.
So to me, I think flatlining can be taken a couple of ways, but I think particularly in this instance, it's not that we are regressing, which is what some people interpret flatlining to mean, but more so that we are just not necessarily growing. We are not receding or entering a recession, truly, but we are also entering a point in time where the growth may not be what we once thought it was. And it may kind of be the case that if the overall industry was worth like $500 million, that it will remain at $500 million. It won't go up, won't go down. It will just remain that exact level. All right, so looking at these stats, there are so many different takes you could have here, but let's just start at the raw numbers for YouTube. So for the Disc Golf Network, they amassed 1.5 million unique viewers on YouTube, gaining over 50,000 subscribers. And then on their paid service, Disc Golf Network, they had a record high number of subscribers. And while those numbers may not be totally public, I do think it was on track to about be double what it was last year. And then on mainstream television, there was the ESPN2 broadcast that amassed 123,000 viewers. There's also going to be another disc golf event for ESPN, I believe this coming Thanksgiving. So we have some new numbers coming out there, but I do think it'll probably be a little bit more than the previous one. So consistent growth is always good. And just briefly touching upon the major manufacturers' profits, and according to the taxes by the Finnish government, Discmania actually profited 1.7 million in 2020, 4.65 million in 2021, and 3.7 million in 2022. So we don't actually know the 2023 numbers, and this is all in euros. So his actual total earnings was nearly $1 million for the year of 2022. Definitely not a bad year, and I presume 2023 to not be that much worse. And so the original commenter said that he had an event that just does not fill the same way that it does. And I think in the same way that Simon responded to this, it is not necessarily a bad thing to have events not immediately fill up. I think that was just a pure supply and demand with the insane uptick of players that just wanted to play an event and basically just wanted to get out of the house. That's not the same case now, but that doesn't mean that the sport is going into recession. That just means that the people that were dying to play events maybe don't really care as much now. They may just want to play casually here and there and doesn't really care about the competitive nature. Me personally, I love tournaments. It is just the thing I look forward to the most in my competitive career. So I love it and I definitely want to play more of it, but I can definitely see the other end, and people were locked up and just wanted to get outside and play as many events as they possibly could. And I definitely kind of like the fact that I can get into an event and not have to sign up the exact day that it goes live. Like, that gives me a lot more peace of mind, and I really like that aspect. And so while I think the overall quote unquote net worth of disc golf is kind of going at a very slow uptick now rather than like an explosive curve upward, I don't foresee that being truly the case internationally. So looking at the US, there is a bunch of courses being built day after day. There's actually double the amount of 9-hole courses as 18-hole courses. And I think this truly embodies what modern day disc golf is. It is not playing 4 hours at a pro level course. It is just playing with a friend or partner at some 9-hole close to you and just spending 30 to 45 minutes playing around. I think if you were to poll the average disc golfer, that is what the average disc golfer is going to do. 30 to 45 minutes of a 9-hole course, maybe once or twice a week. And I know that I'm speaking to a majority of people that probably play more than that. They probably practice a ton. They play courses that last 2 to 3 hours and it's super intense wooded sections. That is probably the minority of players because most people just want to get in and get out. So along with the explosive growth of courses, there's also an extremely high number of courses being built, and particularly Latin America. We have Belize, Guatemala, Mexico, and I think these are definitely going to be places where we definitely see a lot more events on coverage, because right now it's hey, if GK Pro is willing to fly out to Mexico, then maybe we'll get around. But other than that, there's really no way to watch any of the sport. So I think that'll definitely become a change. And while it may not affect a lot of English speakers, especially in the US, definitely think it'll expand the industry as a whole. And then we obviously know about the Nordic countries that have insanely high growth, like Norway, Finland, Sweden. That will continue to increase. But along with that, the amount of integration with disc golf and school programs, PE courses, and disc golf courses being built at the actual school ground, if these continue to happen, then the sport will inevitably grow, because so many kids out there will be playing from age 6 and on and continue to play throughout their entire lives. Whereas right now it's something that you really have to seek out, and it's pretty hard to just stumble upon disc golf. And then beyond school programs, there's also a decent amount of integration with other facilities like the military, churches, lots of college courses exist, and along with that, college teams exist. And then the number one place by far for courses to continually increase is public parks, which according to UDisc in the previous year had about 5,400 courses, whereas schools and colleges only had 1,500. So it is very clear that the sport is primarily driven by public parks. And I think with the relatively low cost to build a course to any Parks and Rec department, they will happily jump upon this because it has so much potential and so few risks involved. And according to UDisc, there's actually more courses than Dunkin' Donuts, which feels surreal, but that is what they said, and I have to believe it. All right, so now into the macroeconomic portion. There's about 1.2 million players on UDisc and roughly about 12 million players at the moment. But with that said, there's 500 million people within 6 miles of a course. And I want to reiterate that there's 500 million, 500 million people within 6 miles of a course. So I'm betting that basically everyone that you know has the ability to play a course within a 30-minute drive, unless they live in like the middle of Antarctica, in which case maybe you should build a course, I don't know. But just seeing how much potential there truly is in the sport and how easy it is to set up a course, get 9 baskets, and to start playing is just so incredibly easy when compared to like basic things like a soccer field or a basketball court. These things are very expensive, whereas just putting a pole in the ground is very, very cheap. And according to this potentially dodgy research report by 360 Research, they have estimated that the industry as a whole will be worth $500 million by 2028. And while that may seem like a kind of large number, that is still just dwarf in comparison to anything else, especially right now pickleball. Pickleball is probably worth like probably 20 times that. So we could definitely have the potential to amass way more followers of the sport than we currently do. To me, it is just a matter of time because the sport is just so very intriguing and very accessible to so many players out there. And in the very similar vein as pickleball, once you start playing one round, you often invite other people to play. There's so often the case that I'm like inviting a friend over and being like, hey, you want to play some disc golf? Like that happens again and again and again. And sure, they may not play again after that, but getting them into the sport allows them to feel what it's like to throw the frisbee, to get it in the basket and kind of be introduced into the sport. And while they're probably not going to spend like thousands of dollars like a lot of us do, the average person will still potentially enter the market, which is often not the case for other sports. Like let's say you play pickup basketball. You probably are maybe buying shoes and the ball, probably not going to amount to too much. But if you do get into disc golf, the average consumer is probably going to spend between like $100 to $300. So there's a lot more money in the sport to truly dive in and experience all the things that you can do with disc golf. So in a very economic sense, every person has a potentially higher value than they would for another sport. And sure, you could say the comparison to golf, that the average golfer spends like thousands of dollars every year, but to me, it's still just a totally different sport. And then lastly, I wanted to bring up the notion about the incredible growth in Europe and Australia, and along with that, the notion of disc golf tourism. So we have so many cool courses out there. We get to see them on coverage. It looks so cool. And people like you and me that are as obsessed with the sport as possible, we want to play these awesome courses, and we are probably willing to drive hours and hours to play these courses. And along with that, we are adding to the economy of whatever city we're at. So let's say you're playing in Emporia, you're building up the ecosystem of the city because you're putting in dollars for meals, housing, gas. All of that makes for a good economic growth of a city. So I truly believe that cities like Charlotte, North Carolina or Lynchburg, Virginia have the opportunity to truly go hard on disc golf and allow it to be a good source of revenue for them again and again, year after year. And if city planners truly see the value of this, then they'll push for more and more courses, allowing the sport to grow much more than it currently is. So in conclusion, I do not think we are entering a recession, even though I do believe that the overall growth of the sport may not be totally rising at the moment. I think overall, the only true recession-based trends that we will see is just consolidation. I think the number of companies that currently exist will diminish in some regard, but the overall sales will remain the same and go up. And me personally, as a disc golf manufacturer, I really do hope that is the case because I do sell disc golf bags, and I truly believe I'm making some of the best bags out there, and I really hope that the sport increases because it would allow me to sell more bags. I am still just a very small number in the grand sense of everything. So with that, what do you guys think? I'd love to hear about it. Do you think that the sport is entering a recession period? Do you think it's just going to be flatlined, as Simon says? Or do you think we're still entering a point of growth for the sport? I'd love to hear about it. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Wild Runs, signing out. Peace.